Hey everybody, welcome back to the Maple Grove Scripture Reading Podcast. All right, so we finished Job chapter 31 last time, and that was the end of something big. Job signed his name to his defense. He demanded that God put the charges against him in writing. He said he'd wear the indictment on his shoulder like a crown, that he'd give an account of his every step. And then he finished the final oath of the series, closed the legal brief, and then stopped speaking. The last line of the chapter was that the words of Job are ended. And then nothing. The friends don't have anything left to say. Job has said everything there is to say, and the room goes quiet. Well, today that quiet gets broken, but not by God. Not yet. This time it's by somebody new. So we're going to look at the first 5 verses of Job 32. Just the 5 verses, all narrative prose. There's no speech. The author steps back into the frame and introduces a character that we've not met before. So let me read through Job 32, verses 1 through 5. So these men stopped answering Job because he was righteous in his own eyes. But Elihu, son of Barachel the Buzite of the family of Ram, became very angry with Job for justifying himself rather than God. He was also angry with the 3 friends because they had found no way to refute Job and yet had condemned him. Now Elihu had waited before speaking to Job because they were older than he. But when he saw that the 3 men had nothing more to say, his anger was aroused. So the 3 friends stopped answering Job because he was righteous in his own eyes. And that might be a loaded way to put it. Righteous in his own eyes is not a compliment from the narrator. It's a characterization that leans in the direction of self-justification, of somebody who has decided the case in his own favor and can't be moved. Now, whether that's fair to Job is a question that the book is still wrestling with, but from the narrator's perspective, this is why the debate ends. The 3 friends ran out of things to say, and Job wasn't moving from his point of view. 31 chapters of some of the most intense theological debate in all of ancient literature, and it ends not with resolution, but with exhaustion. Nobody seems to win. Nobody convinces anybody. Job's not going to confess a sin he didn't commit. The friends can't prove that he did, and so the conversation simply stops. It's maybe one of the most honest things this book has done. Real arguments about suffering and justice don't always end neatly. Sometimes they just run out of steam and both sides are still holding their position. Nobody gets persuaded. The 3 friends walked in at the beginning of chapter 2 to comfort Job, and 30 chapters later, they're out of words and out of arguments, and the man they came to comfort is still sitting in the ash heap, still unvindicated, still waiting for God to answer. And then verse 2 breaks the silence with someone that we've not met yet. But Elihu, the son of Barachel the Buzite of the family of Ram, became very angry, it says. A new character. And right away, the author does something that he didn't do for the other 3 friends. He gives this man a full genealogy. Eliphaz was the Temanite, Bildad was the Shuhite, Zophar was the Naamathite. They're just one-word identifiers. Elihu gets a name, a father's name, an ethnic designation, a family line. 4 details where the others just got 1. Now, it's probably not an accident because when an ancient author gives you a genealogy, they're kind of giving you a signal to pay attention to this person. Now, there's something from the end of the book that's worth keeping in mind as Elihu enters. When God finally speaks in chapters 38 through 42, he rebukes the 3 friends directly, telling Eliphaz that he and his 2 companions had not spoken what is right. But Elihu's not mentioned. He's not rebuked. The 3 friends have to bring burnt offerings and have Job pray for them. But Elihu doesn't face any consequence like that. Whether that means his speeches will hold up better than his friends' arguments, we're going to find that out as we go. But the author's already setting him apart. So who is he? Elihu, son of Barachel. The name Elihu means something like he is my God. It's a theophoric name, a name that's built around God, a name that's a statement of faith baked right into the introduction. His father's name, Barachel, means God blesses, or maybe blessed be God. So before Elihu says a single word, his name and his father's name are already making a theological claim. He is my God, and God blesses. That's his lineage in 2 words. He is a Buzite or Buzite. Buz appears in Genesis 22:21 in the list of the sons of Nahor, Abraham's brother. Nahor's firstborn was Uz. His second son was Buz. Now, if you remember, Job himself is from the land of Uz. The opening verse of the whole book says, in the land of Uz, there lived a man whose name was Job. So there's possibly a distant family connection here. Elihu and Job may come from like adjacent branches of the same extended family tree, both ultimately tracing back to the sons of Abraham's brother. That detail roots Elihu in the patriarchal world, the same world that Job inhabits. So he's not a distant outsider. He belongs to the same general cultural and theological universe as Job and his friends. He worships the same God. He operates within the same framework of covenant and wisdom. And the family of Ram, that's possibly connected to Aram, one of the sons of Shem in the Table of Nations in Genesis. So the genealogical picture is consistent with the ancient pre-Mosaic setting that the whole book of Job inhabits. Now we get all that in one verse, and the author is being deliberate about grounding this new speaker. He wants us to know who Elihu is before we hear a word from him. And what we know immediately is that Elihu is angry, very angry, the text says. And at two different things for two different reasons. First, he's angry at Job, and it's not for the same reason that the three friends were angry. They were angry because Job refused to confess. Elihu's anger is more specific. Job has been justifying himself rather than God. And there's a difference, right? Like the three friends accused Job of hidden sin. Elihu isn't making that accusation here. He's making an observation about Job's posture. Job's been so focused on vindicating himself that in the process, God has been put in the position of the accused. Job's entire defense has been structured around the argument that if he's innocent, then God owes him an explanation. Elihu sees that framing as the problem. Now, second, and this is what sets Elihu completely apart from the three friends, is he's also angry at them. So he's not at Job's side. He's not at their side, but he's angry at both. The friends have found no way to refute Job, and yet they condemned him. That's the charge. They made the accusation, but couldn't back it up. They said, you have sinned over and over, but could never demonstrate it. They condemned without proof. In a legal framework, which is exactly the framework that Job has been using in chapter 31, that's a serious failure. You don't get to return a verdict of guilty without a case. The friends tried, they kept trying, and they came up empty, and still they condemned. Elihu saw it, and it made him angry. So he's the only one in the room who's frustrated with everybody. It doesn't belong to either camp. He's been sitting there listening 31 chapters of this debate, watching both sides fail in different ways, and he's been holding himself back. And verse 4 tells us why. He waited because they were older than he was. It's not a small thing in the ancient world. Age carried with it authority. You deferred to your elders, especially in formal discourse. You waited your turn. You let the experienced men speak first. Elihu had followed that protocol even as his frustration built. He sat on it and he held it. He let the older men have the floor all the way to the end. But then something changed. In verse 5, it says that when he saw the three men had nothing more to say, his anger was aroused. So they were finished. The arguments were exhausted. The silence is sitting there, and the deference that had kept Elihu quiet, the respect for age and experience, no longer had anything to defer to. There's nothing more coming, so the anger that had been building finally broke through. So he's going to speak. We'll hear why next time, and we'll hear it in his own words. But the setup is already here. A young man from Abraham's extended family with theological names in his bloodline who has been listening carefully to a debate that ended in failure on both sides, who held himself back out of respect for age, and who is now finally out of reasons to stay quiet. So next time we're going to see Elihu speak. He starts with an explanation of why he's been holding back, and then he's going to make his case that age doesn't automatically bring wisdom. That's the Spirit in a person, the breath of the Almighty. That's what gives understanding. That'll be next time. But until then, hope you have a great day, and we'll talk again soon. God bless.